Billionaire followed the black janitor, and what he saw at her house changed everything. Julian Hawthorne, a billionaire surrounded by luxury but marked by a silent emptiness, never imagined his life would change when he crossed paths with Maya Robinson, a janitor whose eyes held the strength of someone who had already faced the world head-on. A simple hum in the silence of the night awakened forgotten memories and opened an old wound, bringing back emotions he thought he had lost forever. What began as curiosity turned into something much greater, a clash between two distant worlds, filled with prejudice, pain, and hard choices. Between suspicious glances and social barriers, Maya proved to be stronger than any fortune could buy, and Julian discovered that it wasn't enough to feel. You had to have the courage to fight for what really matters. Before we dive into this emotional story, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Comment your city and state down below. I'd love to know how far our stories are reaching. And if you're into love stories full of emotion, twists, and endings that touch the heart, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. That way you won't miss any of the upcoming stories, and you'll help this space grow and bring more content made just for you. The night in Chicago poured cold light over glass windows while the office on the 52nd floor breathed silence and air conditioning. Julian Hawthorne, 37 years old, light skin, slightly wavy dark brown hair, and striking blue eyes, leaned over a dark wooden desk. His tailored suit shaped his broad shoulders. The Swiss watch weighed on his wrist like responsibility itself. Spreadsheets piled up, the numbers danced, but he kept his gaze fixed, determined, almost impenetrable. It was another night where work served as a shield for a heart that didn't know how to rest. Then, the sound came. Soft at first, like a thread of water crossing the silence of the hallway. A lullaby, without words, just hummed notes, sweet and steady, like someone gently stitching memories back together. Julian lifted his head. The lights of the skyline reflected in his eyes. And for a moment, the steel man looked like a boy searching for something he had lost. The song came closer, carried by the gentle squeak of a cleaning cart and the clean smell of ammonia mixed with something unexpected. Lavender. He stood from his chair slowly. The melody froze something inside him, pulling open a door he preferred to keep locked. Every note fit perfectly into the void left by a memory that refused to die. He opened the office door. In the hallway, fluorescent lights drew long shadows across the polished floor. A few feet away, she came like a secret revealed at just the right time. Maya Robinson, 31 years old, velvety brown skin, curly hair tied back in a low bun that left her face uncovered, deep brown eyes that seemed to hold the warmth of a bonfire. The simple janitor uniform embraced her curvy body with dignity and restraint. Her posture was upright, her expression focused, and the humming was like an invisible embrace. Julian placed a hand on the doorframe, took a deep breath, and a memory hit him all at once. His childhood kitchen, small, warmed by an old oven, the smell of cinnamon, a woman's hands, warm and patient, adjusting his blanket in the middle of the night. His mother smiling with tired, kind eyes, rocking gently while she sang that same melody without rushing. Her voice had held the whole world. And then, the break, the phone ringing, the siren, the news. Silence where music had once lived. The notes now traced the path back inside him. It was impossible, and yet it was real. Julian blinked, as if needing to prove to himself that he wasn't dreaming. The song paused for a second as Maya noticed someone in the hallway. She set down the mop, straightened the cart, and looked at him with professional respect, not subservience. "Good evening, Bagser," she said, her voice low and calm. "Can I help you with something?" Julian took a moment to find his words. "I heard your song." The sentence came out almost a whisper, surprising even him. "It's old." Maya tilted her head slightly, not smiling yet. "I learned it from my grandmother. When the night got heavy, she sang. Some nights still ask for music." He swallowed hard, trying to push away the wave of memories. "It's beautiful," he said, though it felt like too little for the storm that melody had stirred up. "Sorry to interrupt. I just haven't heard that in years. Sometimes we sing to remind ourselves we're still alive," she replied, placing a cloth back into the bucket. "But I promise I'll be done soon. I don't want to disturb your work." "You're not disturbing," he said quickly, surprised at the urgency in his voice. The man who negotiated billion-dollar acquisitions and dictated market trends was now struggling to form simple sentences. "I?" He paused, searching for something that wouldn't sound intrusive. "What's your name?" "Maya Robinson," she answered, holding his gaze with calm confidence. Then, out of respect, she added, "Mr. Hawthorne." He nodded, feeling her name settle strangely in his mind, like it had been waiting for the exact moment to appear. Maya resumed humming, this time even softer, almost a whisper, as she pushed the cart down the next hallway. The sound drifted away like a thread of light. Julian, still standing there, realized his chest hurt. Not the sharp pain of the present, but the old ache of something precious taken too soon. "My mother used to sing that," he said, more to the empty hallway than to her. But the words reached Maya, who turned slightly, not intruding, just offering presence. "I'm sorry," she said, with a simple sincerity that didn't ask for details. Music holds what we don't know how to say. He watched her for another second. There was no rush to please, no fear-driven anxiety. There was work, care, a rhythm of her own. The cloth she wrung out dripped water in steady movements. Her short nails showed hands that knew the weight of the task and still turned it into something orderly and beautiful. It was almost impossible, Julian thought, that something so routine could carry so much dignity. "If you need me to come back later, after you're done, I can," she offered, giving him an easy way out. "I can adapt." "No," he said, and noticed the word came out softer. "You can keep going. I think I like the sound." He almost smiled, something rare for him. "Thank you, Maya." She nodded, and the humming returned, smooth, delicate, steady, like the night was settling back into its place. Julian returned to the office, but left the door slightly ajar. He sat down, and for a moment didn't open the laptop. His eyes moved across the glass wall, the distant buildings, the lines of light crossing the city like glowing veins. He realized that in many years, he hadn't allowed anything to pierce the armor. In less than 2 minutes, the voice of a woman he barely knew had broken through. "This doesn't make sense," he murmured, like someone arguing with his own heart. But the mind that had operated on irrefutable logic for decades gave an inch. On the desk, his phone lit up with new emails. He didn't touch it, he just listened, like someone in the desert finding water and needing to relearn how to drink. Footsteps in the hallway. Maya passed by the half-open door, pushing the cart. For a moment, their eyes met again. There was no smile, just silent respect. A truce. The music faded. The hallway returned to the sound of machines, of circulating air, of a city that never sleeps. And inside him, something stayed awake. A wound that no longer hurt just from loss, but from recognition. "Good night, Mr. Hawthorne," she said, now walking away. "Good night, Maya," he replied, testing her name on his lips like someone learning an old password. When the elevator closed and the building returned to full silence, Julian placed his hands on the edge of the desk, searching for steadiness. The memory of his mother returned with less violence and more clarity, as if the melody had brought back the outlines and colors that pain had erased. The man who always had control realized that, for the first time in a long while, something had controlled him. A simple song, a quiet presence, a chance to see beyond the numbers. Julian couldn't sleep that night. Maya's soft humming echoed in his mind like a scent that lingers even after the person has left. The next day, when he entered the building, he saw her from afar, cleaning the main hall with firm, steady movements. There was nothing servile about her. Every gesture carried a silent discipline, an inner order. And he noticed something he had never paid attention to before. Maya was always on time, always present, never distracted. While other employees hid behind excuses, she seemed to carry a sense of duty bigger than just a paycheck. The following days became an exercise in observation. Julian, a man used to reading reports and projections, now found himself noticing details that had always been invisible to him. The way she greeted each security guard with a respectful nod. The patience she showed while scrubbing a stubborn stain without complaint. The calm she maintained even when someone spilled coffee in front of her without so much as an apology. But above all, it was her eyes. Dark eyes that seemed to hold deep stories, as if they had seen far more than they let on. One night, when most of the staff had already left, Julian watched her again. Maya finished her shift with the same precision as always, turned off the equipment, put the cleaning cloths away, and packed an extra uniform in a bag. But something was different in her expression. An urgency, a determination that didn't match the calm rhythm she maintained at work. Julian stood near the elevator, pretending to check his phone, when he saw her cross the lobby. She was carrying 2 heavy bags, her arms stretched from the weight, but her posture was still upright. The uniform had been replaced with simple clothes, worn-out jeans, a brown coat that looked like it had seen many winters, and faded sneakers. Her curly hair was loose, falling over her shoulders, revealing a natural and quiet beauty. "Good evening, Mr. Hawthorne," Maya said as she passed, her tone calm, as if it were just another ordinary day. "Good evening, Maya," he replied, keeping it formal. But his eyes followed her steps to the door. She stepped outside in a hurry, like someone who didn't have time to waste. Julian, pulled by a force he couldn't explain, felt his heart race. It wasn't suspicion. It wasn't doubt. It was an invisible magnet, a nearly childlike need to know where she was going, to understand what she was hiding behind that quiet strength. He went to the building's garage and got into his own car, a black sedan with discreet lines. He kept a careful distance as he watched Maya walking down the street with the bags. The contrast hit him hard, the illuminated skyscrapers behind him, and that lone figure moving against the cold Chicago wind, as if the city didn't see her, as if she were invisible to everyone. At a red light, he saw her pick up the pace, crossing between cars with ease. The bag swung, heavy, but she didn't stop. Her face was serious, focused, like someone who knew exactly where she needed to be. Julian gripped the steering wheel, breathing harder than he should have. "Why am I doing this?" he muttered to himself. But he didn't slow down. Each corner she turned seemed to bring new questions. The neighborhood began to change. The glass facades were behind them now, replaced by graffiti-covered walls, yellowish light from old street lamps, and streets where silence didn't mean peace, but survival. Maya turned onto a small side street. Julian parked discreetly a few meters away and watched her open the door to a modest house, painted in peeling blue. A teenage girl ran up to her, hugging her tightly. Maya smiled, but it was a quick smile, full of urgency. She placed the bags on a wooden table inside, and even from a distance, Julian could see they didn't contain fancy clothes or personal items. They held bags of rice, beans, milk, school notebooks. He leaned back in his seat, feeling a strange pressure in his chest. The image wasn't one of weakness, but of strength. She wasn't running for herself. She was running to support someone who depended on her. Julian fixed his eyes on that ordinary and yet extraordinary scene. One detail stood out. The teenager opened a notebook full of doodles and showed it to Maya, who bent down, pointed at something with patience, and corrected it. The woman who scrubbed the floors of his office at night was now teaching lessons like a mother would. "Who are you, Maya Robinson?" Julian whispered, not realizing his whole body was leaning forward, as if wanting to go through the glass to understand more closely. But before he could gather his thoughts, the front door closed firmly. The silence of the street returned and surrounded him again. Julian leaned back in his seat, but his heart was still racing. The billionaire who believed he knew everything about everyone had just discovered he knew nothing about the woman who, until a few days ago, was just another shadow in the hallway. That night ended with him still in the car, watching the lit window of the blue house. His curiosity was no longer just curiosity. It was a restlessness that wouldn't let him sleep. Julian remained inside the car, the engine off, watching the lit window of the small blue house. The cold Chicago night fogged the glass, but his eyes stayed fixed. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't thinking about business, contracts, or investments. He was facing a reality he had never allowed himself to see. The door opened again, and Maya appeared, now without the bags. She adjusted her coat and called out for the teenager he had seen earlier. The girl ran out and hugged her tightly around the waist. She looked about 14, light brown skin, tightly braided hair, bright eyes that sparkled with innocence mixed with the weight of growing up too fast. "You took too long today, Auntie," the girl said, hugging her tighter. "I thought you weren't coming back." "I always come back, Sarah," Maya replied, gently caressing her niece's face. "Always." Julian felt a lump in his throat. That wasn't just a phrase. It was a promise full of truth. Those words came from someone who knew what it meant to be abandoned and had sworn never to pass on the same pain. From the car, he watched Maya go back inside with her niece. The living room light spilled through the thin curtain, casting the silhouettes of the two setting the table. The billionaire leaned forward to see better. Maya unpacked the rice, beans, milk mal, and school notebooks from the bags. There was no luxury, only the essentials. Yet she arranged everything with the same precision he'd seen at the office. Everything in its place, every detail handled with care, as if the little they had was a lot. Julian recalled lavish dinners in his mansion, tables covered in untouched dishes, because no one was ever truly hungry. He remembered himself, sitting in silence, surrounded by abundance and emptiness at the same time. The contrast stung. Inside the house, Sarah opened her notebook and showed Maya a page full of equations. "I couldn't solve this part. It's way too hard." Maya sat beside her niece and took a deep breath before responding. Nothing's too hard when you keep trying. Look here, you just messed up the order. If you start again, you'll get it. But what if I'm not good enough? Maya held the girl's chin firmly, looking her in the eyes. You are good enough. The world is going to try to make you believe otherwise. But don't ever listen. You're stronger than you think. Julian closed his eyes for a moment, absorbing every word. It was as if she was also speaking to him, as if she was dismantling the armor that money had built around his heart. When he opened his eyes again, he noticed a detail that struck him even deeper. Maya herself was exhausted, but she smiled at her niece with sweetness. She shared the little she had, not just in food, but in hope. And even with hands marked by hard work, she carried herself with dignity. There was no self-pity, only courage. The silence in the car turned to discomfort. Julian, a man used to controlling everything, felt shame creeping in. He had never understood what real life was like outside the glass walls where he ruled. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the steering wheel, murmuring to himself, "All this time? And I didn't see any of it." Suddenly, the house door opened again. Maya stepped outside to throw out the trash in a makeshift bin by the sidewalk. The cold wind lifted her loose hair slightly, revealing a tired but steady face. She looked toward the dark street, as if sensing eyes on her. Julian quickly ducked down in his seat, his heart racing like a teenager caught spying. Maya stood still for a few seconds, staring into the darkness, then went back inside. The door closed, and the light from the living room stayed on, casting shadows of a simple life behind the curtain. Julian took a deep breath, feeling a mixture of shame and fascination. He was in front of a woman who didn't just survive, she turned survival into dignity. And without realizing it, that realization was beginning to rewrite something inside him. The watch on his wrist showed it was nearly midnight. He knew he had to leave, but he stayed a few more minutes, staring at that little blue house, as if afraid to lose something he was only now starting to see. The next morning, Julian walked into the building with his mind still filled with the image of that small blue house. He tried to focus on the reports and the executives' voices, but during every pause, Maya's steady face came back to him like an inevitable presence. Something in him had changed, and those closest to him noticed. The man who used to walk through the hallways without looking at anyone now paid attention to the smallest details, and his eyes almost involuntarily searched for the janitor. Maya, in turn, noticed it too. While cleaning the main conference room, she felt the weight of his gaze on her. It wasn't the usual distant and superior look. There was curiosity, a restlessness she couldn't name. Her instincts made her stay alert. In places like that, any shift in behavior could mean dangerous misunderstandings. When she finished arranging the table, she heard his voice behind her. Maya, the tone was firm, but carried an unusual hesitation. She turned slowly, still holding a cloth in her hands. "Mr. Hawthorne," she replied, standing straight, with the posture of someone who neither yields nor shrinks. He gestured toward the chair in front of him. "Would you mind sitting for a moment?" Maya raised her chin, surprised by the invitation. The caution in her soul told her to refuse, but she also knew that directly declining could be seen as disrespectful. She sat, keeping her body upright, not relaxing. Julian took a few seconds before speaking, his eyes fixed on her as if searching for the right word. "Last night, I kept thinking about what I heard." Maya frowned slightly. not immediately understanding. "What you heard?" "You're singing," he said, the word almost a whisper. The melody. It brought back something I thought I had lost forever. My mother used to sing the same song. It was like I was hearing her voice again. Silence hung between them. Maya took a deep breath and, instead of getting emotional, held her ground. "I don't sing to be noticed, Mr. Hawthorne. I sing because it's the only way to keep hope alive." Julian swallowed hard, touched by the plain force of her answer. "I didn't mean to suggest that you did it for me. I just—" He stopped himself, feeling vulnerable, something that didn't happen often. "I needed to say thank you." Maya rested her hands in her lap and lifted her eyes to him, steady as steel. "Gratitude is welcome, but it doesn't change reality. I'm still the employee who cleans up what you all leave behind. And I still have to fight every day so my niece can have a better future." Her honesty hit him like a blow. He was used to carefully measured compliments, words crafted to please, never to such raw truth. For a moment, he didn't know how to respond. "You're different," he finally said. "You don't hide who you are. You don't ask for anything." Maya slightly raised her eyebrows. "Asking doesn't guarantee anything, sir." "Sir, I've learned that the world only respects those who stay on their feet, even when everything pushes them down." Julian observed her in silence. No one had ever spoken to him like that, and yet he didn't feel offended, only a growing sense of admiration. The door to the room suddenly opened. One of the directors walked in quickly, holding a folder. Upon seeing Maya sitting in front of the boss, he froze, unsure whether to apologize or proceed. The tension sliced through the air. Maya immediately stood, picking up the cloth she had left on the table. "I'm done here," she said, walking to the door without hurry, but also without looking back. Julian remained standing, the folder forgotten on the table and his heart in disarray. It was as if every word Maya had spoken had ripped a veil from his eyes, exposing him to the real world. As the door closed behind her, he murmured softly, just to himself, "What else are you hiding, Maya Robinson?" Julian spent the following days with his mind consumed by what Maya had said. Her firmness didn't push him away. On the contrary, it drew him closer to a truth he had never faced. From his glass office, he discreetly watched her as she moved through the hallways with her cleaning cart. Every movement was full of discipline, but also something money couldn't buy: dignity. That was when he started acting quietly. He approved a modest raise for the cleaning staff. But Maya was the first to visit HR. "I didn't ask for this," she said calmly but firmly. When the news reached him, Julian understood that she had turned down the extra money. At the end of one shift, he took the chance to speak with her directly. He found her putting away supplies in a narrow storage closet in the basement. The smell of cleaning products filled the space, and still, there was something almost sacred about the way she organized each bottle. "Maya," he called, leaning against the doorway. She turned slowly, wiping her hands on a cloth. "Good evening, Mr. Hawthorne. I heard you turned down the raise." "That wasn't a raise. That was charity," she replied without hesitation. "I don't accept charity." Julian took a deep breath, surprised by her bluntness. "That wasn't the intention." "I thought I needed it," she interrupted, holding his gaze. "I do, but not like that. What I want is opportunity, not pity. Opportunity is a seed. pity dries up the same day. Her words landed on him like stones toppling castles. For the first time, he understood the difference between helping to ease your own conscience and helping to truly change something. The next morning, during a meeting with his corporate philanthropy team, he made an unexpected decision. I want to create a scholarship and training program for families of entry-level employees. Education, job skills, real support. Get it started as soon as possible. Some executives looked at each other, confused. But he didn't explain. He just knew the idea was born the moment he listened to Maya. Days began to change. Slowly, the interactions between them stopped being just between a boss and an employee. One late afternoon, as he was leaving the building, he saw Maya sitting on the front steps with a bottle of water in her hand. He hesitated, but approached. "Can I sit?" he asked, something rare for a man like him. She looked at him for a second, as if reading his intentions, then gave a small nod. "The bench isn't mine. Sit down." He sat beside her, his pristine coat in contrast to her worn uniform. They sat in silence for a few moments before he spoke. "My mother worked nonstop too, but she passed away too soon. Maybe that's why I never really knew how to value the people who carry the invisible weight." Maya tightened her grip on the bottle, not looking at him. Life doesn't ask if we're ready. It just rips away what we love most and forces us to go on. My sister passed. I had no choice. Sarah needed someone, and that someone was me. There was pain in her voice, but also strength. Julian leaned slightly closer, as if her words pulled him in. "And how do you manage?" "By singing," she answered, almost in a whisper. Then she looked at him, her dark eyes steady. "And by believing tomorrow can be different, even when everything screams that it won't." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was heavy, dense, as if each of them had given the other a piece of themselves. In the following days, they talked more. She spoke little about herself, but when she did, her stories came full of truth. Julian, used to keeping secrets, was surprised to find himself telling her things about his childhood, about the loneliness in the halls of his mansion, the emptiness of parties where everyone smiled without joy. With each encounter, he noticed something new. Maya didn't treat him like a billionaire. She didn't fear him, didn't idolize him. She simply saw him as a man. And for someone used to being either adored or feared, that was both unsettling and freeing. One night, as they were leaving the building, a light rain fell, turning the streets into mirrors. Maya pulled her simple coat closed while Julian offered his umbrella. "No need," she said, declining. "You'll get wet," he insisted. "I've been rained on enough in life, Mr. Hawthorne, but if you really want to help me, it's not by shielding me from the rain. It's by making space so I can walk on my own." Julian stood in silence, holding the umbrella without moving. She left him standing there and walked down the wet street, upright like an invisible queen of the city. He watched her until she disappeared around the corner. And in that moment, he understood. He wasn't looking at an employee. He was looking at someone capable of teaching him what all his wealth had never managed to buy. The weeks that followed brought changes that didn't go unnoticed. Julian's gaze toward Maya was no longer that of a distant boss, but of someone who truly saw her. He started listening to her ideas, asking genuine questions about life outside the glass walls, and in strategic meetings, he quoted phrases he had learned from her. Little by little, the bond, born from respect and admiration, began to grow too visible. The hallways, once silent, now carried venomous whispers. Employees murmured among themselves when Maya passed by. "Did you see how he talks to her?" a secretary whispered, eyeing her up and down. There must be something going on. Others chuckled cruelly, suggesting her rise had nothing to do with merit, but everything to do with interest. Maya felt the weight of the stares, but didn't lower her head. She continued her work with the same composure, organizing papers, cleaning rooms, greeting the security guards. Inside, though, every word stung like a blade. The worst came at a business dinner, when Julian brought part of his team and some investors to discuss a new social project. Maya was in the room, quietly helping the support staff for the event. She moved discreetly, until she accidentally overheard a cutting remark from the main table. "Julian, you're a smart man," said one of the older investors, a man with white hair and a voice dripping with arrogance. "But you need to be careful. These simple folks know how to work their way in. One smile, one sad story, and suddenly they're in your back pocket." Another, younger, added mockingly, "Yeah, pretty soon we'll have to call the janitor Mrs. Hawthorne." Laughter filled the room. Maya froze for a moment, eyes welling up. But she didn't let the tear fall. She adjusted the plates with steady hands and continued her task, standing tall as always. A spiteful laugh wouldn't make her forget who she was. Across the table, Julian noticed. His blue eyes hardened, but he said nothing. Caught between the desire to defend her publicly and the fear of jeopardizing deals that held up his empire. Later that night, in the parking lot, he found Maya loading event boxes into a car. "You shouldn't be carrying that alone," he said, walking closer. She looked at him, her breathing heavy. "It's not the weight of the box that hurts, Julian. It's the weight of the words." He tried to step closer, but she raised a hand, firm. "Don't say you're sorry. I'm not a victim, but I won't allow anyone to treat me like an opportunist. If you want to help me, don't protect me in the shadows. Choose a side." Julian swallowed hard, the truth cutting deep inside. For the first time, he realized he couldn't keep hiding between two worlds. That night, lying in his massive and cold bed, he stared at the ceiling in silence. The image of Maya, her eyes unwavering even in the face of humiliation, wouldn't leave his mind. Inside him, one question echoed like a challenge. How many contracts were worth more than a woman's dignity? Morning found Julian in front of the mirror, adjusting his tie, but with a different look in his eyes. The dilemma was now clear. Protect his image before the elite around him, or stand up and face everything for what truly mattered. With each passing day, the weight of the comments built like a wall around Maya. In the hallway, she felt sideways glances, muffled whispers, and even malicious chuckles disguised as small talk. It wasn't just about her, it was about what she represented. A simple black woman daring to stand close to a billionaire many saw as untouchable. The prejudice came in small jabs, but together they cut deep. One evening, when she arrived home, Sarah noticed the sadness in her aunt's face. "What's wrong, Auntie?" "You look off," the teenager asked. Putting her notebooks aside, Maya sat on the worn couch, taking a deep breath before answering. "People talk too much, Sarah. They make up stories, look at me like I don't belong where I am." Her niece came closer and held her hand. "But you didn't do anything wrong." "I know," Maya said, her eyes teary but firm. But sometimes, even when we don't make mistakes, the world finds a way to blame us, and I can't let that land on you. Across town, Julian was feeling the pressure too. In meetings, the investors' suspicious glances became more obvious. "You need to be careful, Julian. one of the partners said in a paternal tone. "A man like you can't let his image be tarnished by distractions." That same week, Julian looked for Maya in one of the building's hallways. She was cleaning a glass table, standing tall as always. He approached, hesitant. "Maya," he said, his voice filled with concern. She stopped, facing him firmly. "Julian, I need to talk to you." "So do I," he replied. "I know what people are saying, but none of it matters. What matters is you." Maya shook her head, holding back her emotions. "It does matter. I can take what they say about me, but I won't let them talk about Sarah. She's just a girl, Julian. She already lost her mother. She's had to grow up too fast. I won't let her suffer more because of me, but I can protect her. I can protect you," he insisted, stepping closer. "It's not about protection," Maya said, steady. "It's about dignity. If I stay, they'll keep pointing fingers, using your name against me, and I won't be seen for who I am. I need to step away." Julian felt the ground slip from under his feet. "Don't do this. Don't walk away from me. I don't know how to live in that emptiness again." She took a deep breath, her eyes glistening, but she didn't let the tear fall. "Yes, you do, Julian. You've lived like that for years. I won't be the excuse for you to change. If you're going to change, it has to be for you." Her words cut deeper than any accusation. He tried to hold her hand, but she stepped back gently, leaving only the emptiness behind. In the days that followed, the building felt cold again for Julian. Without Maya's humming echoing through the halls, without her steady presence, everything seemed gray. He sat through endless meetings, surrounded by voices he no longer heard. At night, he returned to his silent mansion, where the echo of his solitude bounced off the walls like punishment. Deep down, he knew what was happening. He was repeating the very life he had always hated. He had sworn never to become like his father, who traded love for power. But here he was, once again surrounded by wealth and emptiness. Lying in his giant bed, he stared at the ceiling, murmuring to himself, "I lost her because I didn't have the courage." And in that moment, he realized he'd have to make a choice that would change everything. Keep protecting his image, or finally fight for what truly mattered. The days after Maya stepped away were torment for Julian. The mansion felt bigger and quieter, the company's hallways colder, the meetings longer and lifeless. He felt the weight of the choices he hadn't made, and the cowardice that had cost him what mattered most. Then came the unexpected opportunity. The company was preparing a major gala event, broadcast citywide, with investors, politicians, and Chicago's elite in attendance. The theme was leadership and the future. Everyone expected the usual calculated speech, full of numbers and market forecasts. But Julian was no longer the same man. On the night of the event, the ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers and tables adorned with luxurious arrangements. Men in tuxedos and women in long gowns filled the room with power and elegance. Julian stepped onto the stage, sharp in his tuxedo. But the steady look in his eyes revealed something different. Camera flashes went off, and the room quieted as he approached the microphone. "Good evening," he began, his voice deep and controlled. "Many of you expect me to talk about profits, growth, numbers, but that's not what I want to share tonight." Eyes glanced across the room. Some executives frowned, puzzled by his tone. Julian took a deep breath, the words heavy in his chest. "In the last few months, I've learned that real strength isn't in the skyscrapers we build or in the contracts we sign. Real strength is standing tall when life takes everything from you and still choosing dignity. A murmur ran through the audience. He paused, then continued. That lesson didn't come from Harvard or a boardroom. I learned it from a woman many of you know only as an employee. To me, she's much more. She's the most courageous and inspiring woman I've ever met. The shock was instant. Executives exchanged looks. Investors raised their eyebrows. Reporters began scribbling furiously. Julian kept his tone firm. Her name is Maya Robinson, and she taught me that dignity can't be bought, hope can't be negotiated, and courage doesn't depend on wealth. She showed me that to live is to resist, even when the world tries to erase you. From the back of the room, a stir. Maya was there, among the staff helping with the event. She wore her simple uniform, her hands still smelling of cleaning products. When she heard her name echo from the microphone, her legs trembled. Her heart raced. She looked around and saw the surprised stares, some disapproving, others simply curious. Then Julian made the defining move. Tonight, in front of all of you, I won't hide who truly inspires me. I'm not ashamed to say this woman changed the way I see life. If that bothers anyone, so be it. But I will no longer live in the shadow of your expectations. The ballroom fell into complete silence. His words were too powerful to ignore. Some whispered indignantly, others applauded discreetly. Maya felt her face flush, but she lifted her chin. She walked toward the door, not seeking attention, but every step was watched. Before exiting, she turned and looked at the stage. Her eyes met his, and in that gaze, there was pain, surprise, and something that, despite everything, hadn't died. Trust. Julian didn't look away. He held her gaze, and for the first time, in front of the elite who had always judged him, he made a clear choice: to stand by her. The room still buzzed with murmurs after Julian's speech, but Maya couldn't stay until the end. She walked out with firm steps, even though her heart was in turmoil. The cold Chicago night greeted her with a cutting wind, but nothing felt as intense as the confusion inside her. She walked quickly through the streets, trying to make sense of what had just happened. He had exposed her to everyone, but not as a target for mockery. He had lifted her up as someone worthy of respect. The next morning, Maya woke up early, though her mind hadn't rested. As she made breakfast for Sarah, the girl's eyes sparkled with excitement. I saw it online, Auntie. He said your name in front of everyone. He said you're the most courageous woman he's ever met. That's amazing. Maya looked away, stirring the kettle. Sarah, don't get carried away by pretty words. The world is harsh. One speech doesn't change everything, but maybe it changes you too, her niece said, smiling softly. Those words planted a seed Maya tried to ignore, but couldn't. By the end of the day, she took a deep breath and made a decision. She would go see him. Julian's office was quiet when she walked in. He stood with his back to her, staring out the window at the lit-up buildings. When he heard the door close, he turned, and seeing her there softened his eyes. Maya, he said, voice low, almost relieved. You came. She stood tall, but there was emotion in her eyes. After what you did yesterday, I couldn't pretend nothing happened. I needed to understand. Julian took a few steps toward her. I should have done that a long time ago. I should have taken a stand from the beginning. I failed you." Maya pressed her hands against her sides, trying to stay composed. "You know what I went through. The looks, the words, the assumptions. I felt alone." "I know," he said, getting closer. "And it was cowardly of me not to stand by you from the start. But yesterday I decided I'm done living in fear of what others think. Because you gave me back something I thought was dead inside me." She frowned, confused. "What?" "The ability to truly love," he said without hesitation. "I've spent my life surrounded by people, but I've never felt whole. You showed me that real wealth isn't what I own. It's what I feel when I'm with you." His words left him more vulnerable than ever. For a moment, Maya wanted to retreat, to protect herself. But the sincerity in his eyes was impossible to ignore. She took a deep breath, her eyes welling with tears. "Julian, I'm afraid. Afraid to believe again and lose everything. Afraid that the dignity I fought to keep will be stepped on again." He reached out his hand, not forcing, just offering. "I can't promise the world will stop judging, but I can promise you'll never face it alone again." Maya stood silent, her heart torn between reason and hope. Finally, she stepped forward and placed her hand in his. A simple gesture, but full of meaning. Julian's eyes filled with emotion. He stepped closer, whispering, "Thank you for giving me this chance." She only nodded, feeling that despite the fear, it was time to believe again. Outside, the city kept pulsing like always, unaware of that reunion. But for the two of them, everything had changed. The reunion between Julian and Maya didn't erase the criticism or the cruel looks overnight, but it changed how much they hurt. For the first time, she wasn't alone, and he wasn't hiding. What once fueled gossip in the hallways became a challenge they now faced together. The next morning, as they entered the company building together, employees exchanged glances, but Maya walked with her head held high, and Julian stayed by her side, unbothered. The message was clear. There were no more secrets. Some executives tried confronting him in private meetings. "Julian, this could ruin your image. Investors don't take well to this kind of exposure." He looked them in the eyes. "Firm, if my image can't survive the truth, then it's worthless. What matters to me now is building something meaningful, not just stacking numbers in a bank account." His words hit hard among those used to power without responsibility. But the real shock came weeks later, when Julian announced, in front of the press, the launch of a social project focused on education for youth in underserved communities. The name chosen was symbolic, Project Hope, inspired by his conversations with Maya. At the press conference, he made sure to highlight, "This initiative was born because someone taught me that dignity is not negotiable." That person is Maya Robinson, and she's the one I'll share not only my life with, but this mission too. Camera flashes lit up the room, and Maya, standing beside him, felt her eyes tear up. It wasn't pity, it wasn't charity, it was recognition. At home that night, Sarah hugged her aunt with pride. "You changed everything, Auntie. You're not just my hero anymore. You're a hero to so many people." Maya smiled, caressing her niece's face. "I didn't do it alone, Sarah." Sometimes, when we fight to stay on our feet, we find someone willing to walk beside us. Julian walked over, having heard her words, and added, "And it's in that walk that we discover life's true value. It's not in money or power. It's in the courage to love, even when the world tries to silence us." Maya looked at him with tenderness, and in the courage to fight for dignity, always. The three embraced, like a family born from pain but blooming in love. Outside, the city lights kept shining as always. But for them, the light now came from within. The billionaire, once imprisoned by emptiness, had found home in the humble song of a woman who sang to survive. And she, who only wanted to keep hope alive, discovered that she could love without losing her strength. The final lesson was clear and unshakable. Real power isn't about ruling the world. It's about changing lives, starting with your own. And that brings us to the end of this intense story of love, dignity, and resilience. Now I want to hear from you. What did you think of Julian and Maya's journey? Leave your rating from 0 to 10 on how much this story touched your heart. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, share with someone special, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And before you go, I've picked another emotional and even deeper story for you. One I'm sure will touch your heart in a unique way.